The Galactic Combat Academy floated between stars like a small moon wrapped in shining metal. From the outside, it looked peaceful, bright towers of silver and blue light spinning slowly above a gas giant. But inside, it was far from calm. It was loud. It was full of noise, shouting, and strange alien voices echoing through the halls. Every day, hundreds of young cadets from all across the galaxy trained there. Tall, winged creatures from the outer colonies. Four-armed reptilian warriors known for their brutal strength. Even silicon-based life forms that looked like walking crystals. They were all gathered for one purpose, to become the best soldiers in the galaxy. And then there was Vance, the only human. She stood near the back of the main training hall, wearing her gray cadet uniform a size too big, her short brown hair tied back so it wouldn't get in the way. Around her, the others towered. The aliens looked twice her height and 3 times her weight. Some didn't even bother hiding their smirks when they saw her. Humans were new to this academy. The Galactic Council had allowed them to join only recently, mostly as an experiment. Many alien species believed humans were weak, slow, and too emotional for real combat. Mara had heard it all before. Fragile species, one alien whispered in a voice that clicked with every word. Why is she even here? Another said, watch her try to lift a training rifle that was clearly too heavy for her to hold steady. Mara ignored them. She always ignored them. That was the only way to survive the first few weeks at the academy. The instructor entered, a tall alien with skin that looked like silver liquid. He floated slightly above the ground, his voice echoing like metal against glass. Cadets, he said, today we test strength and coordination, weapons for the strong, tactics for the weak. He looked straight at Mara with unreadable eyes. Let's see what you are. The test was simple, or so they said. Each cadet had to lift a standard training weapon, a plasma axe designed for heavy combat. For most species, it was easy. Their arms were thick and strong, their nerves reinforced with synthetic fibers. One by one, the alien students lifted the weapon, activated the glowing edge, and swung it in clean arcs. The energy hummed through the air. When it was Mara's turn, the laughter started before she even touched it. The handle was as tall as her chest, the metal head glowing faintly blue. She took a breath, tried to lift it, and it didn't move, not even a little. The laughter grew louder. Some of the aliens clapped sarcastically. Others shook their heads. Mara stepped back. Her arms burned and her cheeks flushed red, but she didn't look away. May I use a smaller one, sir? She asked. Her voice didn't tremble, not even a little. The instructor tilted his head. At the academy, we do not adjust our weapons. We adjust our warriors. Yes, sir, she said quietly and stepped aside. For the rest of the session, she stood watching. The aliens sliced through moving drones and blasted targets with perfect precision. Sparks flew, lights flashed, and energy hummed through the hall in rhythm. She studied their movements with sharp eyes, noticing how they swung wide, depended on strength instead of balance, how their power was blind and heavy. At the end of the day, the cadets returned their weapons. The instructor's metallic face turned toward her again. Humans, he said, voice dripping with doubt, are unarmed by nature. You will need to find a way to compensate. The aliens murmured in agreement. Mara smiled faintly. Maybe being unarmed isn't the same as being helpless, she said under her breath, but no one heard her. Later that night, the training hall was empty except for the low hum of machines. Mara sat alone on the floor, her back against a crate, her uniform wrinkled and boots dusty from the day's drills. Her arms still hurt from trying to lift that weapon. She held her hands out, palms blistered. Most humans would have quit by now. The academy was known to break cadets, even from the strongest alien races. It demanded strength of body, mind, and spirit, and punished weakness without mercy. But quitting wasn't in her blood. She thought of Earth, of home, of how her people had rebuilt cities after wars, survived disasters, and kept going when everything seemed lost. Humans weren't the strongest or the fastest or the smartest, but they adapted. She looked across the hall at the weapon racks, shining in the dim light. Rows upon rows of alien technology, too heavy, too advanced, too artificial for human hands. Then her eyes fell on a small maintenance robot in the corner, scraping metal scraps into a bin. The sound of metal grinding metal echoed softly. A spark flickered in her mind. "Compensate, huh?" she whispered. Before she could think more, the sound of an alarm cut through the silence. The floor vibrated, lights flickered red, and a voice echoed through the hall. "Training error, simulation active. All exits sealed." She jumped up as the walls shifted. The drones hanging from the ceiling powered on, red lights blinking. Across the room, a door slammed shut, trapping her inside. What started as a quiet evening had turned into something else, something dangerous. The simulation system had activated by accident, or maybe it hadn't. Either way, Mara was stuck unarmed in a live combat zone meant for full squads. The first drone dropped from the ceiling with a loud hiss. It scanned the room, detected her movement, and fired a stun pulse that missed her by inches. The energy bolt exploded against the wall, leaving a glowing mark. Mara ducked behind the table, breathing fast but steady. She scanned the floor, metal scraps, broken chairs, maintenance tools. Nothing powerful, nothing fancy. Just simple, solid pieces of metal. "Unarmed, huh?" she said again, her jaw tightening. She reached for a loose pipe and held it like a bat. "Let's see about that." The drone turned, targeting her again. She gripped the pipe. When the next bolt came, she dove, rolled, and swung. The pipe smacked the drone hard enough to knock it off balance. Sparks flew. She hit it again, this time with both hands. The drone crashed to the floor, motionless. Inside the empty training hall, the sound echoed loud and clear. The human had just destroyed a combat drone, using nothing but a pipe, and somewhere deep in the Academy's control room, a silver-skinned instructor looked at the live feed, leaning closer. His reflective eyes widened ever so slightly. "Well," he whispered to himself, "maybe this human isn't as unarmed as we thought." The morning after the accident, the Academy buzzed with whispers. Someone had survived a rogue training simulation, unarmed. When Mara Vance entered the hall, every alien eye turned toward her. "The human did it," someone hissed. "With a pipe." Mara kept walking as if she didn't hear. But inside, she felt that small spark. Finally, they weren't laughing. Then the loudspeaker called out, "Cadet Vance, Training Bay 4. Now." In the giant chamber, her instructor floated above the floor, silver skin catching the light. "You claim the system malfunctioned," he said. "I don't claim," Mara replied. "It happened. Today you'll prove it. Simulation level 7. No human has passed it." She nodded. "Yes, sir." The simulator blinked to life. In seconds, she stood in a scorching desert with 3 aliens. KYRKL, a reptilian brute, Nero, a quick 4-armed amphibian, and Viri, a glowing crystal being. KYRKL laughed. "The fragile one again?" "She's a new wild card," Nero replied. An alarm shrieked. The drones arrived. Bolts of blue plasma tore through the sand. KYRKL charged, roaring axe blazing. Viri hurled energy shards. Mara dived behind a broken metal rover, unarmed as usual. She spotted a loose steel rod, wired at one end, a makeshift hook. The next drone swooped low, and she swung hard. The rod slammed through its engine. Sparks burst, and the machine dropped, smoking. Nero's eyes widened. Did she just... "Yes," KYRKL growled. "Beginner's luck." But the drones regrouped. They were trapped. "Follow me," Mara ordered. She pointed to a cracked beam above. "If we drop that, we block their scans. It weighs tons." KYRKL snarled. "So push harder." Together they pulled cables, cut locks, and dragged until beam crashed down with a thunderous roar, filling the air with dust. Under the cover, they sprinted toward the extraction point. When the light blinked out, the simulation dissolved. Silence filled the dome. The instructor floated down, eyes shining faintly. "You broke formation," he said. "Yet you succeeded." Mara simply shrugged. "Adapt, sir. That's what humans do." As the others left, she looked down at the bent rod still warm in her hand. It wasn't elegant. It wasn't alien. But it worked. She slipped a scrap of alloy into her pocket. Her first fragment of an idea. Unarmed, she whispered, smiling. For now. Days passed, and whispers about the human kept spreading through the academy halls. Some cadets called her lucky. Others said she cheated the simulation. But those who fought beside her, HFY, Viri, and Nero, stayed quiet. They had seen what she could do. Mara trained harder than ever. She wasn't the strongest or fastest, but she never stopped moving. When the others rested, she stayed in the workshop, late into the night. The maintenance bots rolled by silently while sparks flickered in the air. She studied the alien weapons, how they hummed with energy, how they relied on power cores and stabilizers. She noticed something no one else discussed. Every weapon here was designed to amplify strength, not create it. Humans had no such privilege, so maybe she needed a different path. One evening, she found an abandoned crate of alloy scraps, broken armor plates from damaged training drones. The metal was the toughest kind used at the academy, and too heavy for most species to shape by hand. Most students recycled it. Mara, instead, started hammering. At first, she built nothing that worked. The shapes bent, cracked, or felt wrong in her grip, but she kept going, sweating until her arms ached. "Come on," she muttered. "You've never let metal beat you before." Bit by bit, she shaped something new, a long staff with two weighted ends, somewhere between a hammer and a weapon of balance. It was raw, unpolished, primitive, yet when she held it upright, the weight felt perfect. The next morning, she carried it into class. HFY stared at the thing. "What is that supposed to be?" he asked, tail twitching. "A tool," Mara said. "It's a stick. Every weapon starts that way." The instructor looked down from the observation deck. "Cadet Vance, you bring unauthorized equipment into the hall?" "Yes, sir. I built it from damaged training metal." He paused. "Proceed, then. If it fails, you will rebuild it correctly." They started drills. The cadets faced off against moving gravity drones again, machines built to test reflex and control. HFY and Nero went first, smashing the targets with glowing energy axes. When Mara stepped up, the room grew quiet. She spun her crude weapon once, gripping firmly, and struck. The hit echoed with a boom that shook the floor. The drone didn't just fall. It collapsed, its armor folding under the sheer physical force. Gasps filled the hall. The instructor floated closer. "How did you—" "I didn't use energy," she said. "Just weight, balance, and leverage." One alien whispered, "That's not possible. We can't even lift those alloy pieces by hand." Mara looked down at her weapon, then back up. "Maybe you're using the wrong hands." When training ended, every cadet crowded around her creation. They tried lifting it, one by one. None could even raise it an inch. Viri's crystal body flickered. "Strange," he murmured. "It responds to her. The metal remembers its maker." Mara wiped the sweat from her face. "No," she said softly. "It just remembers effort." And with that, she slung the heavy weapon across her back and walked out the hall in silence. Behind her, the whisper began to spread again, this time tinged not with laughter, but with a quiet trace of fear. The human made something the machines can't match. Word of Mara's strange new weapon spread across the academy, like wildfire. Some cadets called it impossible. Others whispered that humans use secret technology. Soon even the instructors were curious. On the 7th day after her demonstration, a public training match was scheduled in the central arena. Thousands of cadets gathered on the stands of shining metal, the noise echoing off the dome. At the center stood HFY, the reptilian warrior, nearly twice Mara's height, wrapped in polished battle armor. He was famous for his strength. He swung his plasma axe with ease, arcs of blue light humming each time it sliced the air. When Mara stepped onto the platform, quiet fell for a heartbeat and then turned to laughter. She wore no armor, just a gray uniform and the strange weapon she had forged from scrap. HFY grinned. "At last," he said, voice deep and rough. "A fair challenge. Let us see how long you last." Mara rested her hammer on her shoulder. "You sure you want fair?" A sharp whistle signaled the start. KY Arkell moved first, fast for his size. The axe came down like a lightning strike. Mara rolled aside, the blade cracking the floor where she'd stood. She turned, swung her hammer low, and hit his leg armor. The sound boomed to the arena like thunder. The reptile stumbled backward, stunned. His armor wasn't destroyed, but the dent it left was deep. Gasps rippled through the crowd. He roared and charged again, striking faster, brighter. Every blow filled the air with sparks. Mara ducked, parried, spun. The hammer whistled as it moved, glinting silver under the lights. Each time it met his axe, it sent vibrations through the whole platform. KY Arkell bared his fangs. No human should have that power. Good thing I'm not just power, Mara answered. She stepped inside his guard and slammed the hammer into the center of his chest plate. The armor crumpled, throwing him to the ground. Silence fell. Then the instructor, watching from the balcony above, leaned forward. Enough, he said, voice carrying through the dome. Training point, Vance. KY Arkell sat up slowly, panting. His armor smoked. He looked at her, disbelief replacing anger. How did you do that? You don't even have enhanced muscle fibers. Mara tapped the weapon's head against the floor. Maybe strength isn't about what your body can hold. Maybe it's about what your mind refuses to drop. She extended a hand. He hesitated, then took it, letting her pull him up, around them. The crowd stayed silent, not mocking this time, but watching with new respect. The instructor floated down, silver robes trailing. Cadet Vance, he said softly, you've changed the expectations of this academy. I didn't mean to change anything, Mara answered. I just wanted to keep up. His metallic voice shifted almost to wonder. You may have done much more than that. That night, the footage of the duel went galaxy-wide. Titans of alien military academies rewatched the strikes in slow motion. The numbers didn't make sense. The physics didn't fit. The hammer way beyond any known cadet's capacity. Yet she moved it as if it were part of her. And across the academy halls, the whisper returned once more, low, awed, unstoppable. They called her Unarmed, until she showed them what human hands could build. After her duel with KY Arkell, Mara Vance was no longer just a human. She was now the story whispered through every corridor of the Galactic Combat Academy. Cadets paused mid-training to stare when she passed. Some nodded respectfully. Others stepped aside, uneasy. The hammer strapped across her back gleamed faintly under the artificial lights, its surface etched with small dents and scars, a record of every hit it had survived. The whispers echoed. That's the weapon she built by hand. It bends but doesn't break. She forged it without plasma. No alien can even lift it. For the first time, the laughter was gone. In its place came something new, fear. In the grand laboratory above the training halls, scientists picked apart the footage from her fight. They slowed every frame, ran every scan. The readings were impossible. The hammer didn't draw power from any reactor or core. It held no internal generator, yet somehow amplified kinetic energy far beyond normal limits. It defies our system, one researcher murmured. It moves like it responds directly to her intent. The instructor stood behind them, silent for a long moment. Not the weapon, he finally said. The human. Down below, Mara kept to her usual schedule. She didn't brag, didn't show off. She trained. Alone. Swing, pivot, strike. Again. Sweat rolled down her face as the hammer boomed through the air with each movement. KY Arkell sometimes joined her now. He no longer mocked. He learned. Your kind fights with stubborn hearts, he admitted. You think before you hit. Not smarter, Mara said, smiling. Just slower at giving up. Even Veery, the crystal cadet who once doubted her, began studying her motion. Balance, he told her. Humans build harmony without technology. Fascinating. But higher officers didn't see fascination. They saw danger. One evening, Mara was summoned to the council chamber. 5 senior commanders stood around a glowing table. The silver instructor was among them. Mara Vance, said the lead officer, we've examined your device. It breaks every safety standard of this academy. Its energy output threatens training stability. It must be surrendered for study. Mara looked from one face to another. Calm. Steady. With respect, sir, she said. You can study it after I'm finished learning from it. Cadet, this is not a request. The instructor's metallic eyes flickered slightly, but he said nothing. Mara reached up, unhooked the hammer from her shoulder, and set it on the table. The heavy thud echoed through the chamber. The officers leaned in, but when one tried to lift it, it didn't move. Neither did the others. The alloy clung to the floor as if rooted. She lifted it again effortlessly, resting it across her arm. Seems like it only works for the person willing to build it, she said quietly. There was silence. The instructor finally broke it. Let her keep it. That night, when Mara returned to her quarters, she looked out the window at the scattered stars. Her reflection glimmered against the black. She whispered to herself, Fear turns to respect when you stop waiting for permission. Inside the halls behind her, the story spread faster than before. The council tried to take the human's weapon. They couldn't even lift it. Maybe the weapon isn't strange. Maybe the human is. And deep in the workshop, the metal hammer glowed faintly in the dark, as if it knew the truth already. Weeks passed. The buzz around Vance and her handmade weapon refused to fade. Some called it legend, others a warning. But one thing was certain, the Galactic Combat Academy would never look at humans the same way again. Then one night, as stars drifted quietly outside the station windows, the alarms blared. Emergency! Outer defense breached. Hostile ships approaching. Lights flashed red along the corridors. Doors slammed shut. The Academy trembled as explosions rippled through its shield walls. Mara ran into the training hall, already strapping on her lightweight suit. KYR Nero and Viri were there too, faces hard and ready. What's happening? She called. Pirates. KYR said grimly. They got battle drones. Our main cannons are offline. Viri's voice pulsed with static. Command wants us to hold the hangar bays. Without weapons. Mara looked down at her hammer, resting in her grip. The metal was cold, almost humming. Then we fight with what we have. The hangar was chaos. Cadets scrambled to move ships. Others ducked for cover as the first wave of raiders stormed in, metal beasts with glowing eyes, firing plasma bursts that shredded the walls. Mara sprinted ahead, body moving before her mind could catch up. She swung the hammer in a wide arc. The impact cracked the drone in half, sending sparks raining across the deck. The shock wave rippled to the floor, throwing enemies back like rag dolls. Her team followed, shouting orders and fighting beside her. Nero darted around with desperate speed. KYR blocked shots with his heavy frame, and Viri used shards of crystal light to blind attackers. For every drone destroyed, 2 more replaced it. The floor was a maze of smoke and debris. Mara, we're losing ground, Nero shouted. Mara looked toward a damaged fuel canister near the bay doors. Not if we move it. They dragged the massive cylinder upright. Mara slammed her hammer against its base once, twice. The metal shook, vibrations building. The sound rose like thunder. Then, with one final hit, the echo burst outward in a shockwave that rattled the entire hangar. The ceiling shook, lights flickered, and every pirate drone in range collapsed, systems fried by pure concussive force. When the smoke cleared, silence hung heavy. Only their shallow breaths filled the room. KYR turned slowly. You just saved the entire station. Mara rested the hammer on her shoulder, exhausted but smiling. Not me, she said. All of us. Hours later, the Galactic Council reviewed the combat feed. Dozens of species and officers watched as a single human, unarmed by regulation but armed with her own will, defended one of their stations against overwhelming odds. When the Council's records updated the next day, humanity's description shifted forever. Status: non-combat species, adaptive combat specialists. And in the Academy corridors, the new saying spread like starlight. Never call a human unarmed. If they have nothing to fight with, they'll build something you can't even lift. As the stars turned beyond the window, Mara Vance stood quietly in the training bay, hand resting on the scarred metal of her creation. The hammer no longer glowed. It didn't need to. It had already done its job.